What up, everyone? I'm back for another video. This time we got a movie review. One that I totally forgot was happening. It just literally snuck up on me. I was at the gym today at 10:30 at night and was watching the TV and saw the commercial for Ghostbusters, and I was like, oh fuck! I forgot I was supposed to go see that tonight. Literally hopped off the treadmill, bought a ticket as I was walking to my car, and saw it right then. It's so random and there was very little advertising for it. There's been commercials the past week or two, but before that there was just very little hype, very little advertisement, so it really creeped up on there. But we're going to talk about that movie right now. I'm going to give it a quick little review, give you my thoughts, and then you're going to go in the comments and give me your thoughts too, and we'll start a little discussion there, and that's how this works. So, overall thoughts on the film. I really liked it. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Much, much more than I thought I was going to. Because when I saw the trailers of this movie with the kids playing around, I'm like, oh, it looks so stupid. And to be clear, a lot of the parts with the kids were really stupid. I still can't figure out why they decided to go with such young kids. That just seemed like a very odd choice. And there are a lot of parts in the movie that just seemed a little bit goofy because it's like, these are kids. Like, why did they go this direction? It was the same with the 2015 or whatever year that last one came out where they went all women. Nothing against women. I love all those actresses. They did a great job. But it was just such an odd choice. Why? Why do that? That's so odd. And this time around they went with kids, and it's like, that's weird. Why'd you do that? Why didn't you just pick adults? It's so odd. But overall, I did thoroughly enjoy the film. Now, to be clear and to start off saying, I enjoyed it as a fan of Ghostbusters. With all my reviews, though, I try to score it and review it based on what the average person would think. Because I'm obviously biased. I grew up with the Ghostbusters. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. As a kid, I was a huge Ghostbusters fan. I remember those movies, gigantic fan of the franchise, so I'm a little bit biased. So I'm going to try and take my own personal thoughts out of it when I'm giving it an actual score. So just keep that in mind. But for people that are a fan of the movie or of the franchise, I think they'll like this too, because there was a ton of fan service in the movie. It wasn't like a complete wipe the slate clean and reboot or anything like that. It was a continuing story from the old movies, and there was a lot of fan service. There was a lot of little subtle winks and nods and jokes and stuff like that. Whereas if you hadn't seen the original Ghostbusters, which I don't know if there's anyone who hasn't, but if you hadn't, you probably wouldn't get those jokes, and this movie wouldn't really be that exciting to you. So, starting off right away, the intro to the movie, it said Ghost Corps, which I didn't realize is its own production company. Started back in 2015 when they made the last movie. Now, they're in control. It's a subsidiary of Columbia, I think. I can't remember if it was Columbia or Paramount or someone like that. It's a subsidiary of that, but it's its own production company. And I think they're trying to get this franchise back off the ground. And to that I say, great, fantastic. I really do think this should be an ongoing thing. I don't think this should just be a cool movie from the 80s. I think it should be an ongoing thing because there is a huge fan following. I recently watched a documentary specifically about that, about people that are fans of Ghostbusters. It was made before the female version of the movie came out, and there were people 20 years later that are still huge fans of the movie, that go to conventions, that still do all the cosplay. So there's a huge fan following, and I think it's a good idea for them to not necessarily reboot, but to give new life into it, do a whole new trilogy, or whatever it takes. I hope they do follow more through it, because I think that's a great idea. So overall, it started off pretty strong. From the very opening scene, I thought wow, the production quality on this is quite high, much higher than I thought it would be for a goofy. Before I saw it at the time, I thought it was a kids movie because it had kids in it. Production value was very high, and spoiler alerts, by the way, as you all know. But the opening character was very obviously Harold Ramis, the Egon character. I think they were trying to not show his face to give it away too much, but I think it was very obvious that's who it was, and it was very obvious that was his kids. A lot of the movie was very predictable. Not in a bad way necessarily, but it was just very obvious the direction they were going, and it was obvious what was going to happen, so not bad, but it's just, I think they tried to be a little subtle, which is good, but it was just definitely a given. But overall, the story behind it was good, and I like that, and normally when movies do a kid's version that have child actors, it's usually for kids because it's always stupid. It's always so dumb. And that's because child actors are usually terrible. Once in a blue moon, there will be one good child actor. And you can go back through history starting from the 80s with like Macaulay Culkin. He was good, and then every other kid actor after that was crap, and every once in a while there's a good one. So I was expecting this to be terrible, but the child actors in this were actually surprisingly good. Like, I'm not going to say they were amazing actors or anything like that, but they definitely weren't terrible, and it became very apparent that this wasn't a kid's movie. This wasn't geared towards kids necessarily. So I was very surprised by the acting quality of these young actors. And I recognized that girl character, McKenna Grace, right away. She was in Gifted with Chris Evans. Fantastic actress. Like, man, talk about talent. That kid's got some talent. Really, really good actress right there. I remember seeing Gifted, and fantastic actress. So I'm glad that they got some real talent in this movie from these young kids, because really great. And she does a lot of stuff too. I was reading up on her bio. She's quite fantastic. And at the end of the movie, during the credits, there was a really cool song I'd never heard before. So I Shazammed it and downloaded it, listened to it on the drive home. Then when I was doing research for the movie, I realized that that song is her song. McKenna Grace did the song in the ending credits. It's a really cool song. It's called Haunted House. That's her song. She's a singer, songwriter, director as well at like the age of 15. So that's really impressive. So I'm not surprised at all. She's actually very talented, and she really carried the movie. She kind of carried the whole movie on her back with her acting talent, so she was a very good main character. That being said, there were still some goofy parts. There were very many parts in it where we're driving the cars and shooting stuff around where it's like, it's a little hard to really appreciate because it's just a little bit goofier with kids, but wasn't due to the acting talent of those little kids or anything like that. It's just because of the scenarios. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. It's just always a little off-putting. But her as a character, her character is very funny. She had a lot of jokes in it that I legitimately laughed out loud at, so I really enjoyed her as a character. I really do hope they make a sequel and have that cast back, because they did a fantastic job. Other than that, things I really appreciated were the special effects. There were many parts in it that they used actual models and they used actual puppets, much like they did in the original version, which I really, really appreciate. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because whenever they do either reboots or decades later sequels, they always have new technology, which is fine, but it just never looks like it did originally. So it's like, it always confused me. Like, I get that CGI is the new technology, but even if you have the best CGI in the world, it doesn't look like it did in the 80s. It doesn't look like those original puppets. So why not just spend the money and do that? And I'm pretty sure they did, unless it was the most amazing CGI ever. That there were parts in the movie where they used the actual puppets for I call them the dogs. I'm sure they have a better name than that I don't know of. But there were parts like when the dog was in Walmart or whatever, that it was an actual puppet and it wasn't CG. So I really appreciate that. And a lot of the sets were actual sets. It wasn't just green screen. Like, I'm sure they did green screen, but a lot of it had like actual scale models and stuff like that. So I really appreciate the finer touches like that. Aside from that, the CG, all the computer-generated images were really well done as well. One of the few movies where I wasn't bothered at all because it looked legit real. And thank God that we're finally coming to a point in our lives where CG actually fits into the movie and doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. It actually is starting to look real. Thank the Lord, because for 30 years, it has ruined just about every movie it's ever been in. They all can't even begin to tell you the terrible CGI characters that have been in movies and just ruined movies. So thank God that we're finally getting to the point where it looks realistic. So the special effects, whether they were the puppets or the models or the CGI, were all done really well. It fit really well. It fit in with the background, the lighting, the coloring, all was done fantastically. I was thoroughly impressed by that, so they did a very good job. And like I said, many things were true to the source material. Like, there were a few parts where it showed certain ghosts, and they did it like the 80s style. They didn't have to. The technology's come leaps and bounds since then. But they did the old style where it was like I don't know if they did stop motion necessarily, but it looked like a stop motion puppet, and they just did like a transparent overlay on the film. That's how they did it in the 80s, and that's how they made it look now. And they had one scene where the skeleton was in the bar, and it was an actual little skeleton, little animatronic guy. I appreciate that. I don't get why these movies don't do that. It worked in the 80s. It looked good in the 80s. Don't change things. Do it the same way. They did that, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. So like I said, a lot of little subtle nuances there that were very clearly done intentionally to mirror what was done in the 80s. Technology is different, doesn't matter. Do it like they did then. It looked really well, and I was very happy with the end result. Going on to the end. Again, very predictable. I kind of knew the Ghostbusters were going to show up. Like, it was very obvious that was going to happen. But it was still really cool to see. It was a really cool moment that came through. The only part I didn't expect, and I don't know why I didn't expect it, was Harold Ramis coming back as a ghost, and that scene where he's like helping his granddaughter hold the proton pack, and it's like, man, like that brought a tear to my eye because it was just like such a touching moment. It's one of those things that's just like really touching because you don't think you're ever going to see that again. Obviously, Harold Ramis died years ago, and they could have done a CGI double, and they kind of did that, but they did it so well. They did such a good job at making his appearance. It looks legit for once. It didn't look goofy at all. They did a really good job. And to see the 4 Ghostbusters there again, like after he's passed, to see them all together again was like a big deal. Like, it was a very touching moment, and I'm getting like teary-eyed just thinking about it. But I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but it's something I grew up with. And when Harold Ramis died, I just knew, and you accepted that there's never going to be a Ghostbusters team again like the original. They're never going to bring it back as he has passed. So seeing that moment there was just like, wow, that's really cool. And it just became a really good ending. That was really nice. It was a little bit awkward because obviously he wasn't there. They did a CGI of his body, and he didn't talk or anything like that. He just kind of nodded his head, which is a little awkward, but, I get it. I get why they didn't do that. It is unbelievably hard, speaking as an audio engineer, unbelievably hard to, make someone's voice sound like someone else. It's just damn near impossible to do, and the amount of work that goes into it to make it even sound somewhat okay is ridiculous. So I don't blame them at all for not going down that road, because I know they have nothing but respect for him, and I don't think they wanted to make him seem goofy in any way. So I'm assuming that's the reason why he didn't say anything, and I get that. But it just was a little weird that the whole time there's these big moments and pauses where he looks like he's going to say something, and then he just doesn't. It's like, well, that's a little weird, but, it is what it is. So that was great, and I liked the ending. And there was an after-credits scene with Sigourney Weaver, and they did it really well in the credits where they were saying all the guest appearances, and then they say Sigourney Weaver's name, and you're like, she wasn't in the movie, and then her scene shows up. And I was like, oh, that was a nice little touch. I like that. It was very well done. And I really liked the after credits scene where it was Ernie Hudson, and he's like supposedly reviving the fire station. So I think the plan is to continue the story and make sequels, and I really hope they do. I really hope this doesn't just die off like the last one, because they keep trying to breathe life into the franchise and it keeps dying, and it's such a shame because it's so well loved by so many people. So it looks like they really got some traction this time, but we'll see if it actually happens. I really hope it does, though. I'd love to see more sequels of this movie. So now, on to the actual rating. Like I said, I loved it. I personally really, really liked this movie. Aside from a few goofy kid parts that were in there, all the nostalgia, all the fan service in there, all that appreciation was fantastic. So honestly, if I were giving this score just based on me, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10 because I loved it so much. But that's not the score I'm going to give it, because I don't think the average person would be as nostalgic and in love with it as I was. Not everyone grew up in the 80s. Not everyone, even if they did, was a big fan of Ghostbusters and saw all the movies and watched these documentaries. So for that reason, as a general score, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Because it was well done. It was very well done. Like I said, great actors, absolutely fantastic. CG was great. The story was, it was pretty good. It made a little bit of sense, but there was a lot of those goofy moments with the kids, so I think if there are people that have never seen Ghostbusters and they just saw this, I don't think they would like it at all. But I think the average person at least has an idea of what Ghostbusters is, or has at least seen one film, so they would be able to enjoy it enough, but not be in love with it. They would appreciate it and enjoy it, but that's about it. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 on that. But let me know what you think. Are you a huge hardcore fan? Did you like it? And are you one of those people that don't know much about it? How did you feel about it? I'm legitimately curious and would like to know. Other than that, like I said, I wasn't even planning to do this video. I was making notes, fully ready to do some nerdy news because I needed to do a video this week and totally forgot about Ghostbusters. So nerdy news next week because there's a lot to talk about. This was a huge week for news. There's tons of trailers, and I just saw that Cowboy Bebop got released like literally right now at midnight, which was 2 hours ago, the live action one, which looks dope. Can't wait to watch that. More boxes to come as soon as Loot Crate gets here, more reviews, all kinds of fun stuff coming. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. See you on the next video. Love you all. Peace.